Good morning. It's March 17th, 2022. Happy St. Patrick's Day. This is To My Liberal Friends, and I'm John Haddo. The Biden administration has decided to deploy Vice President Kamala Harris to support Democratic candidates prior to the midterm elections. I'm sure this is fresh off her resounding victories in Europe, where she wowed the Europeans with her knowledge and intellect. Now, her primary purpose in this latest campaign will be to enumerate the accomplishments of the administration. I can think of a few she could discuss to encourage voters to elect Democratic candidates. First, she should talk about the southern border. I mentioned this one first because this was one of the initial assignments given to Vice President Harris. She has made one cursory visit to the border, and now that seems to be out of sight, out of mind for her. We continue to see a flood of people crossing the border illegally, with no policy in mind about how to check the wave of immigrants, and data shows that they're coming from all around the world. They simply have to get into Mexico and then make the crossing. Or she could talk about inflation. She can certainly cite the fact that inflation is running at almost 8%, and that number could creep higher. Perhaps she could tell the voters not to worry. This is a mere transitory issue and won't last. Of course, she will not fully understand that when you pump trillions of dollars into the economy, you can expect inflation to rear its ugly head. Third, I'm sure she would want to get into a nice discussion about the cost of energy in this country. She can remind the voters that she and Joe Biden promised to attack the fossil fuel industry, singling out both oil and coal. She will probably omit that gas prices were at $2.32 a gallon when they came into office, and now they're averaging over $4.30, and in some places they're over $5 and headed to $6 a gallon. You can be sure she will mention the famous bipartisan infrastructure bill that Congress passed and Biden signed. It has become the centerpiece of his first 15 months in office, and you would think that the administration would have learned something, but the aides surrounding Biden are tone deaf and thought they could jam anything through with their slim majorities. Perhaps if they'd actually moved bills through the regular process, introduce a bill, send it to the committee, hold hearings, and hear from witnesses, then mark it up in committee with amendments, then send it to the floor. They might have actually got some Republicans on board and passed some other stuff the American public would agree that they wanted. Charles C.W. Cook, in a recent article, succinctly described Kamala Harris. Quote, "How talented is Harris? Talented enough to make the inanities uttered by her rival Pete Buttigieg sound substantive, concise, and apprehensible. Talented enough to make Dan Quayle seem like Pericles. Talented enough to make Marjorie Taylor Greene remind one of top form Jane Austen. Never in the field of human rhetoric has an experiment in political growth been such a spectacular and unmitigated bust." End quote. Now he goes on further. When discussing energy, Harris has in mind a vague, albeit wholly unanchored futurism. Thus we get sentences such as, quote, "That's why we're here today, because we have the ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been and to make the possible actually happen." Come again? I don't know. Have you been able to decipher that? Well, she just came back from Europe and she burnished her foreign policy skills. Mr. Cook writes, quote, "On foreign policy, Harris wished to project a sobriety that is half Churchill in the House of Commons and half Brutus delivering his funeral oration. But because she has not done the reading and rarely knows where she is, she ends up sounding like a punch-drunk Napoleon at the opening of a suburban toy store. 'I am here,' Harris said last week, an ersatz frown rippling awkwardly down her face. Standing here on the northern flank of the eastern flank, talking about what we have in terms of the eastern flank and our NATO allies. And what is at stake at this very moment? What is at stake at this very moment are some of the guiding principles." Again, what in the heck is she saying? On medicine, she knows, frankly, this virus, she has said, it has no eyes. I'm glad we cleared that up. If you really want to understand what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, you only have to listen to how she described the situation to some foreign leaders and the press in a recent visit to Munich. Now, you would think I was making this up, but I'm not. And I'm going to quote, "We're talking about the potential for war in Europe. This is in response to a radio host asking her then to elaborate. Quote, in layman's terms, for people who don't understand what's going on, and she took her exposition all the way down to studs, quote, so Ukraine is a country in Europe. And she just stood there staring out there before proceeding, assuming the person asked the question knew exactly what she was saying. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong, and it goes against everything that we stand for. I shudder to think what could go wrong on the campaign trail. It was only a short time ago that Stacey Abrams found a scheduling conflict that prevented her from sharing the stage with the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden. His numbers were so low, she decided it was better to be absent to get a photo op with him. How many candidates are going to want to stand next to Kamala and wince as she embarrasses both herself and the candidate? I suspect the demand for her appearances is not going to be as high as they might think. In fact, some people might adopt the strategy of just keeping her out.